The distant whistle of the approaching train echoed through the crisp Montana air as Catherine Porter stood alone on the Sweetwater Station platform, her cream-colored traveling dress fluttering in the autumn breeze of 1878. She had traveled over 2,000 miles from Boston, exchanged countless letters with her fiancé Harold Blackwell, and now found herself scanning the sparse crowd with increasing desperation. The station clock ticked past 3, then 4 in the afternoon, but there was still no sign of the man who had promised to make her his wife. Catherine checked her pocket watch for what seemed like the 100th time. The train had arrived at precisely 2:15 p.m., just as scheduled. Harold had written that he would be waiting for her, eager to introduce her to her new life in Montana territory. His letters had painted such a vivid picture of their future together, the ranch he was building, the community that awaited her, the life they would create. Yet here she stood, alone, as the afternoon shadows lengthened. "Last call for passengers to Billings," the conductor shouted, breaking through her worried thoughts. The platform had nearly emptied now. A few cowboys lounged against the station wall, eyeing her with curious glances. A mother hustled 3 young children toward a waiting wagon. But no Harold. "Excuse me." Catherine approached the station master, a balding man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose. "I'm expecting to be met by Mr. Harold Blackwell. Has there been any message?" The station master scratched his chin. "Blackwell, you say? Can't say I've heard anything, miss. But folks sometimes get delayed. Roads can be troublesome this time of year." "Yes, of course," Catherine said, though worry gnawed at her insides. "I suppose I'll wait a while longer." Another hour passed. The station emptied completely, save for the station master who occasionally cast sympathetic glances in her direction. The sun was beginning its descent behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink that Catherine might have found beautiful under different circumstances. She sat atop her large trunk, chin resting on her gloved hand, when the sound of approaching hoofbeats caught her attention. Her heart leapt with hope, but instead of Harold, a tall cowboy dismounted from a chestnut mare. He was dressed in typical Western attire: dusty boots, worn denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his features. He spoke briefly with the station master, who gestured in her direction. The cowboy approached her with measured steps, removing his hat to reveal wavy sandy-colored hair and striking blue eyes set in a sun-weathered face. He couldn't have been older than 30. "Miss Porter?" he asked, his voice deep but gentle. Catherine stood, smoothing her skirts nervously. "Yes, I'm Catherine Porter." The man's expression was unreadable. "I'm Samuel Zane. I work at the Diamond Creek Ranch, not far from Blackwell's place." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news." Catherine's hands clutched her reticule tightly. "Has something happened to Harold?" Samuel Zane's gaze was direct but compassionate. "There's been an incident, Miss Porter. 2 days ago, Blackwell got himself into a dispute at the Silver Dollar Saloon. It ended badly." He shifted uncomfortably. "He's been arrested for shooting a man. The fellow lived, but Blackwell's looking at significant prison time." The world seemed to tilt around Catherine. "Prison?" she whispered. "But we're to be married next week. He's been building our home." "I'm sorry, miss," Samuel said, genuine regret in his voice. "The sheriff's holding him in Clearwater, 20 miles from here. There's to be a trial, but with witnesses aplenty." He left the implication hanging. Catherine felt her legs weaken beneath her, and she sank back onto her trunk. Everything she had planned, everything she had dreamed, gone in an instant. 2,000 miles from home with no one to turn to, no money beyond what she carried, and no prospects. "If I may ask," Samuel ventured after giving her a moment to absorb the news, "do you have somewhere to go? Family in these parts?" Catherine shook her head. "No one. Harold is all I have here." She looked around at the now deserted station, reality crashing down around her. Night would be falling soon, and she had nowhere to go, no plan. Samuel ran a hand through his hair, considering. Then, with a decisive nod, he stepped forward and lifted her heavy trunk effortlessly. "Come rest a while at Diamond Creek," he said, securing the trunk to his horse. "The ranch owner, Mrs. Eleanor Wilson, is a kind woman. She'll know what to do better than most. It's not proper for a lady like yourself to be stranded with no arrangements." Catherine hesitated, years of propriety and caution warring with her desperate circumstances. I couldn't impose. It's no imposition, Samuel assured her. Mrs. Wilson would have my hide if I left a lady alone at the station with night coming on. His expression softened. It's just temporary, until you sort things out. You can write to your family back east, make arrangements. With no viable alternatives, Catherine nodded. Thank you, Mr. Zane. I accept your kind offer. Samuel helped her mount his horse, arranging her skirts modestly before taking the reins and leading them down the dirt road away from Sweetwater Station. Catherine sat stiffly, overwhelmed by the realization that her life had just taken an unimaginable turn. It's about an hour's ride, Samuel explained, his stride steady beside the horse. Diamond Creek's one of the more prosperous ranches in these parts. You'll be comfortable there. As they traveled, the landscape opened before them, rolling hills, stands of pine trees, and glimpses of mountains on the horizon. Under different circumstances, Catherine might have been awestruck by the wild beauty of Montana Territory. Now, she merely felt adrift in its vastness. Have you known Harold long? She asked eventually, needing to break the silence. Samuel seemed to consider his answer carefully. Known of him longer than known him personally. He came to the territory about 2 years back, bought land neighboring ours. Something in his tone made Catherine glance down at him sharply. You don't approve of him. Samuel's eyes remained fixed on the path ahead. It's not my place to approve or disapprove, Miss Porter. Please, Catherine pressed. If there's something I should know. After a pause, Samuel sighed. Blackwell has a reputation for being quick to anger and quicker to the bottle. The man he shot was accusing him of cheating at cards. He glanced up at her. I'm sorry. That's not something a lady should have to hear about her fiancé. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. Better the harsh truth than a comfortable lie, Mr. Zane. They continued in silence until the outline of buildings appeared against the darkening sky. A large main house, a barn, several outbuildings, and what looked like bunkhouses. Lanterns were being lit, casting a warm glow as they approached. This is Diamond Creek, Samuel announced, helping Catherine dismount. Her legs were stiff from the ride, and she stumbled slightly, causing Samuel to steady her with a hand at her elbow. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her, which she immediately dismissed as simple gratitude for his assistance. A woman emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on an apron. She was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked dark hair and a face that spoke of both hardship and kindness. Samuel Zane, who have you brought home with you? She called, though her tone was curious rather than accusatory. Mrs. Wilson, this is Miss Catherine Porter, Samuel explained, removing his hat respectfully. She arrived on today's train from Boston, expecting to meet Harold Blackwell. Understanding immediately dawned on Mrs. Wilson's face. Ah, the bride. I heard about Blackwell's trouble. She stepped forward, taking Catherine's hands in her own. You poor dear. What a terrible welcome to Montana. Samuel suggested I might find temporary shelter here, Catherine said hesitantly. I would, of course, compensate you for any inconvenience. Nonsense, Mrs. Wilson declared. Any decent Christian would do the same. Come inside, child. You must be exhausted. As Samuel carried her trunk toward the house, Catherine caught his eye and mouthed a silent, thank you. His answering smile, brief but genuine, was the first comfort she'd felt since learning of Harold's betrayal. The interior of the Wilson home was surprisingly refined for a frontier ranch. Polished wooden floors, quality furnishings, and tasteful decorations that spoke of prosperity tempered with practicality. My late husband built this place 15 years ago, Mrs. Wilson explained, noting Catherine's appreciative glance. Started with nothing but dreams and determination. Now Diamond Creek runs 500 head of cattle and employs 15 men. She led Catherine to a cozy bedroom on the second floor. This was my daughter's room before she married and moved to Denver. Make yourself comfortable. Supper will be ready shortly. Left alone, Catherine sank onto the bed, finally allowing the tears she'd been holding back. Everything she had planned for her future had vanished in an instant. She had sacrificed her position as a schoolteacher in Boston, said goodbye to what remained of her family, and traveled across the country for a man who had revealed himself to be nothing like the gentleman who had courted her through his letters. After washing her face and changing into a simpler dress from her trunk, Catherine made her way downstairs. The dining room held a large table where several ranch hands were already seated, along with Mrs. Wilson. Samuel sat among them, freshly washed, his hair still damp. "Ah, here she is," Mrs. Wilson announced. "Everyone, this is Miss Catherine Porter. She'll be our guest for a time." The men nodded respectfully, a few murmuring greetings. Catherine was guided to a seat beside Mrs. Wilson, with Samuel across the table. "We were just discussing the roundup," Mrs. Wilson explained. "Fall's a busy time on a ranch." Throughout the meal, Catherine observed the easy camaraderie among the ranch hands. They clearly respected Mrs. Wilson, who managed the conversation with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. Samuel spoke little, but when he did, the others listened. After dinner, when the men had excused themselves to return to the bunkhouse, Mrs. Wilson poured Catherine a cup of tea and settled across from her in the parlor. "Now, dear, let's talk about your situation," she said gently. "Samuel told me what little he knows, but I suspect there's more to the story." Catherine explained how she and Harold had begun corresponding through a matrimonial advertisement in a Boston newspaper. His letters had been eloquent, painting a picture of a prosperous rancher seeking a wife to share his frontier life. After 8 months of correspondence, they had agreed to marry. "I had no family keeping me in Boston, except a married sister," Catherine explained. "My parents passed away years ago. Teaching was rewarding, but the prospect of having my own home, perhaps children someday." She trailed off, embarrassed by how naive she now sounded. Mrs. Wilson's expression was sympathetic but not pitying. "Many women have come west on similar hopes, myself included. Though I was fortunate that my Robert was exactly the man he claimed to be." "What should I do now?" Catherine asked, feeling utterly lost. "I have some savings, but not enough for immediate passage back east. And I'm not even sure I want to return in disgrace. First, you'll stay here until you've had time to consider your options," Mrs. Wilson said firmly. "There's no need for hasty decisions. Sweetwater may be small, but we have opportunities for a well-educated woman like yourself." Later that night, Catherine stood by her bedroom window, gazing out at the vast starlit sky. In Boston, buildings and gas lamps obscured such celestial displays. Here, the heavens seemed endless, magnificent in their splendor. Perhaps, she thought, there might be a place for her in this wild, beautiful territory after all. Morning brought the sounds and scents of ranch life, the distant lowing of cattle, the smell of coffee and bacon, men's voices calling to one another as they began their day's work. Catherine dressed in her simplest attire, a practical blue dress with minimal ornamentation, and ventured downstairs to find Mrs. Wilson in the kitchen. "Good morning, my dear," the older woman greeted her. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected," Catherine admitted. "Mrs. Wilson, I want to make myself useful while I'm here. I'm not one to sit idle." Mrs. Wilson smiled approvingly. "I thought you might feel that way. The men's breakfast is already served, but you could help me with the account books afterward. My eyes aren't what they used to be." Catherine spent the morning reviewing ledgers, impressed by the scope and organization of Diamond Creek's operations. Mrs. Wilson explained each entry patiently, painting a picture of the ranch's yearly cycle. At midday, Samuel appeared at the kitchen door, removing his hat as he entered. "Mrs. Wilson, we're heading out to check the north pasture fences, expecting to be back before sundown." His gaze shifted to Catherine, and she was struck again by the intensity of his blue eyes. "Miss Porter, I hope you're settling in all right." "Very well, thank you," Catherine replied. "Everyone has been most kind." Samuel nodded, seemingly pleased. "Good. That's good." He hesitated, then added, "If you'd like, I could show you around the property sometime. When you're ready." "I'd like that," Catherine said, surprised by the warmth in her own voice. After he left, Mrs. Wilson gave Catherine a speculative glance, but made no comment. The days fell into a pattern. Catherine helped with household tasks, continued learning about ranch operations, and wrote letters, one to her sister explaining her situation, and another, after much deliberation, to Harold at the Clearwater jail. In the latter, she formally broke their engagement, her pen firm despite the ache in her heart, not for him, she realized, but for the future she had lost. Samuel remained a constant, respectful presence. A week into her stay, he made good on his offer to show her the ranch. On horseback, Catherine riding a gentle mare named Daisy, they traversed Diamond Creek's extensive property. "Mrs. Wilson mentioned you were a teacher in Boston," Samuel said as they rode side by side along a creek banked by golden aspens. "For 5 years," Catherine confirmed. "I taught children from age 6 to 12. We could use a proper teacher in Sweetwater," Samuel remarked. "The children get schooling of sorts from the minister's wife, but she's got no formal training." The idea took root in Catherine's mind. "Do you really think there might be a position for me?" Samuel's smile was genuine. "I can't imagine anyone would object to a qualified Boston schoolteacher taking on the role. Mrs. Wilson sits on the town council. She could speak on your behalf." As they continued riding, Catherine found herself drawn to Samuel's quiet strength and evident integrity. Unlike Harold's flowery letters, Samuel's words were few but meaningful. She learned he had come to Montana as a young man of 20, worked his way up from ranch hand to foreman, and earned Mrs. Wilson's complete trust after her husband's death 3 years prior. The ranch would have failed without him, Mrs. Wilson told Catherine one evening as they sewed by lamplight. "Most of the men respect him, but a few resented taking orders from someone so young." There was talk of leaving. Her needle flashed in the light. Samuel never raised his voice, never threatened. Just worked harder than anyone, made fair decisions, and stood by them. "He seems a good man," Catherine said carefully. Mrs. Wilson's knowing smile made Catherine blush. "One of the best I've known, second only to my Robert." 2 weeks after her arrival, Catherine accompanied Mrs. Wilson to Sweetwater for supplies. The small town consisted of a main street with essential businesses: general store, blacksmith, saloon, small hotel, church, and a combination post office and telegraph office. The building serving as the schoolhouse was little more than a cabin at the edge of town. At Mrs. Wilson's urging, Catherine introduced herself to Reverend Thomas and his wife, who enthusiastically embraced the idea of a trained teacher taking over educational duties. "The children need more than I can offer," Mrs. Thomas admitted. "Especially now that we're expecting our own little one." She placed a hand on her slightly rounded belly. "We should call a town meeting," Reverend Thomas suggested. Next Sunday after services would be convenient for most folks. Word spread quickly through Sweetwater and surrounding homesteads. That Sunday, Catherine found herself standing before the assembled townsfolk in the church, explaining her qualifications and vision for the school. From the back of the room, Samuel watched, his encouraging nod bolstering her confidence. The vote was unanimous. Catherine would become Sweetwater's schoolteacher, with a small salary and living quarters in rooms behind the schoolhouse. She would begin in 2 weeks' time, allowing her to settle in and prepare. "I don't know how to thank you," Catherine told Mrs. Wilson as they rode back to Diamond Creek. "You've given me a new start when I thought all was lost." "You've earned it yourself," Mrs. Wilson replied. "Though I confess I'll miss your company." The following days were a flurry of preparation. Catherine inventoried existing school materials, created lesson plans, and with Mrs. Wilson's help, began arranging for the simple furnishing of her new accommodations. Samuel assisted as well, repairing broken desks and building a bookshelf for her quarters. Catherine found herself looking forward to his visits, enjoying their conversations as he worked. "Did you attend school much as a boy?" she asked one afternoon, handing him nails as he secured the bookshelf to the wall. "Not as much as I'd have liked," Samuel admitted. "My pa needed help on our farm in Missouri. But my ma had been a schoolteacher before she married. She made sure I could read and cipher better than most." "She would be proud of the man you've become," Catherine said softly. Samuel's hands stilled momentarily, and when he turned to look at her, something in his expression made her heart beat faster. "Thank you, Catherine. That means a good deal, coming from you." It was the first time he had called her by her given name, and the intimacy of it lingered between them. 3 days before Catherine was to move into town, unexpected news arrived. A rider from Clearwater brought a letter from the sheriff. Harold Blackwell had escaped custody during a prisoner transfer, allegedly with outside help. He was considered dangerous, and citizens were warned to be cautious. "Do you think he might come here?" Catherine asked Mrs. Wilson, her hands trembling slightly as she refolded the letter. "It's possible he doesn't know you're in Sweetwater," Mrs. Wilson said, though her concerned expression belied her reassuring words. "But perhaps we should delay your move to town just to be safe. Samuel was more direct when he learned the news. "You'll stay at Diamond Creek until he's recaptured," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The schoolhouse is too isolated, and you'd be alone there at night." Frustrated by this setback but understanding the concern, Catherine agreed to postpone her move. The school committee was informed, and it was decided that classes would begin as scheduled, but Catherine would commute daily from Diamond Creek, accompanied by one of the ranch hands. The first day of school arrived crisp and clear. 14 children of varying ages gathered in the schoolhouse, eyes wide with curiosity about their new teacher. Catherine had worn her most professional attire, a high-necked navy dress with minimal trimming, and arranged her hair in a simple but dignified style. "Good morning, children," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I am Miss Porter, and I'm honored to be your teacher." By midday, Catherine had assessed the children's varying levels of education and begun grouping them accordingly. The older boys were resistant at first, particularly 16-year-old Thomas Jenkins, who declared he was only attending because his father insisted. "I'll be running our ranch soon enough," he announced. "Don't need book learning for that." "Mr. Zane runs Diamond Creek Ranch," Catherine countered calmly. "I've seen him review accounts, calculate supplies, write correspondence, and measure lumber with precision. Would you say he's successful at his work?" The boy grudgingly nodded. "Then perhaps you might consider that his book learning contributes to that success," Catherine suggested. Young Thomas had no ready response to that, and Catherine noted with satisfaction his more attentive posture for the remainder of the day. When school dismissed, Samuel himself was waiting outside with the wagon. "How was your first day, Miss Porter?" he asked as he helped her aboard. "Challenging but rewarding," Catherine replied, unable to keep the enthusiasm from her voice as she described her students. Samuel listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about her teaching methods. As they traveled the road back to Diamond Creek, Catherine realized how natural their conversation had become, how comfortable she felt in his presence. "You're good with children," she observed. "Have you ever thought of having your own family?" The question slipped out before she considered its propriety, and she immediately blushed. "Forgive me, that was terribly forward." But Samuel didn't seem offended. "I've thought about it," he admitted quietly. "A home of my own, children, a wife to share it all with. But it would have to be the right woman. Someone who understands this life isn't easy, but it's worth the hardship." His gaze met hers, and Catherine felt something unspoken pass between them, a possibility, a future neither had anticipated. The moment was shattered by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. 3 riders appeared around the bend in the road ahead, and Samuel tensed, his hand moving to the rifle secured beside the wagon seat. "Get down," he said in a low, urgent voice. "Stay out of sight." Catherine ducked behind the wagon's side panel, her heart pounding. Through a small gap, she could see the approaching riders slow their horses. "Afternoon, Zane," called the leader, a wiry man with a patchy beard. Catherine's blood ran cold as she recognized Harold Blackwell from the single photograph he had sent her. "Blackwell," Samuel acknowledged, his voice betraying nothing. "Heard you were headed for prison." Harold laughed, an ugly sound. "Change of plans. Just passing through to collect something that belongs to me. My bride should have arrived a few weeks back, pretty Boston girl named Catherine Porter. You seen her?" "Can't say that I have," Samuel replied evenly. "Though I heard talk she returned east when you got yourself arrested. Sensible woman, by the sound of it." Harold's expression darkened. "You calling me a liar, Zane? Word is she's staying at Diamond Creek, and now you're teaching at the Sweetwater School." His hand rested meaningfully on his holstered pistol. "I've got unfinished business with that woman." "Whatever business you think you have, it's done," Samuel said, his tone hardening. "Miss Porter broke your engagement, legal and proper. She owes you nothing." Harold spat to the side. "She owes me plenty. Came all this way to be my wife. I've got a place ready and everything." "A place you'll never return to," Samuel countered. "You're a fugitive now, Blackwell. Smart thing would be to ride on. Maybe try your luck in Canada." The standoff stretched, tension thick in the air. Catherine held her breath, terrified that Harold would search the wagon or, worse, that violence would erupt. Finally, Harold jerked his head to his companions. "We'll continue this discussion another time, Zane, when we're not in the middle of the road in broad daylight." "There's nothing to discuss," Samuel replied. Miss Porter has made her choice. She's building a new life here, one that doesn't include you. Harold's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. He yanked his horse around. Tell her I'll be seeing her soon. With that ominous promise, the three men galloped away. Once they were out of sight, Catherine emerged trembling from her hiding place. He knows I'm here, she whispered. He'll come for me. Samuel's expression was grim as he took up the reins. We need to get back to Diamond Creek. The ranch is defensible, and we have men who can stand guard. That evening, a strategy council formed in Mrs. Wilson's dining room. Samuel, the ranch foreman, and three trusted hands discussed security measures while Catherine and Mrs. Wilson listened. We should send word to the sheriff in Clearwater, suggested John Parker, one of the older hands. Already done, Samuel confirmed. I dispatched a rider while you were setting the watch rotation. But it could be days before any lawmen arrive. What does Blackwell want with Miss Porter? Asked another hand. Begging your pardon, miss, but it seems a lot of trouble for a broken engagement. Catherine felt all eyes turn to her. In his letters, Harold often mentioned a substantial inheritance he was expecting from his uncle back east. He said it would arrive shortly after our wedding. She hesitated. I'm beginning to wonder if he needed a respectable wife to fulfill some condition of the inheritance. That would explain his desperation, Mrs. Wilson mused. Though not his criminal behavior. Blackwell's always been reckless, Samuel said. Getting arrested for shooting a man over cards proves that. But now he's desperate, which makes him dangerous. The discussion continued, plans made for Catherine's protection. She would not return to teaching until Harold was captured. The ranch would maintain round-the-clock guards. Catherine would remain in the main house at all times. Later, unable to sleep, Catherine sat by her bedroom window, gazing out at the moonlit ranch yard where armed men patrolled. She had come west seeking a new life, a husband, a home. Instead, she found danger and uncertainty. A soft knock at her door startled her. Opening it cautiously, she found Samuel standing in the hallway, his expression troubled. I apologize for disturbing you so late, he said quietly. But there's something I need to say, and it shouldn't wait until morning. Catherine wrapped her shawl more tightly around her shoulders. What is it? I've been thinking about what Blackwell said, Samuel began. About coming for you. I believe he meant it. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Catherine had come to recognize as a sign of his agitation. There's a way to protect you that we haven't discussed. It would be unconventional, but it could work. What are you suggesting? Catherine asked, though something in his expression made her heart race. Samuel met her gaze directly. Marry me. Not for real, or rather, legally real, but understood between us to be an arrangement of convenience. As my wife, you'd have the protection of my name and position. Blackwell would have no claim on you whatsoever. Catherine stared at him, stunned by the proposal. Samuel, I couldn't ask that of you. You didn't ask. I offered, he said simply. It makes practical sense. You need protection. I can provide it. And what happens after Harold is captured? Catherine asked softly. Would we simply dissolve this convenient arrangement? Something flashed in Samuel's eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even hurt. If that's what you wanted, yes. There are ways to end a marriage discreetly. He paused. But I should be honest, Catherine. My feelings for you have grown beyond mere concern for your welfare. I would hope, given time, you might consider making our arrangement more permanent. Catherine's breath caught. Samuel. You don't need to answer now, he said quickly. It's late, and I've given you much to consider. We can discuss it tomorrow. After he left, Catherine remained by the window, her thoughts in turmoil. Marriage to Samuel Zane, even temporarily, had not been part of her plans. And yet, she couldn't deny the warmth she felt in his presence, the admiration that had grown during their acquaintance. Was it possible to find love where she least expected it? Morning brought clarity. After a nearly sleepless night, Catherine knew what she must do. She found Samuel in the stables, checking the horses before the day's work began. I've considered your proposal, she said without preamble. Samuel straightened, his expression guarded. And I accept, but with conditions, Catherine stated firmly. First, this will be a real marriage in all respects, not merely a legal convenience. I won't enter into such a sacred covenant under false pretenses. Samuel's eyes widened slightly. Catherine, second, she continued. You must understand that while I have deep regard for you, I cannot honestly say I love you yet. But I believe that love can grow, given time and nurturing. A smile began to form on Samuel's face. Those are fair conditions. Any others? Yes, Catherine said, her courage nearly failing her. If we do this, there's no dissolving the arrangement later. We face whatever comes together, as true partners. Samuel stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I agree to all your terms, Catherine Porter. And I should confess something as well. He took her hands gently in his. I've been falling in love with you since the day I found you waiting alone at the station. Catherine's heart seemed to stop, then race ahead. Truly, truly, he confirmed, his voice tender. I admire your courage, your intelligence, your kindness. I've never met a woman like you. Impulsively, Catherine rose on her toes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Then let's be married, Samuel Zane. As soon as it can be arranged. Reverend Thomas agreed to perform the ceremony the following day. Mrs. Wilson, though surprised by the suddenness, gave her wholehearted blessing and immediately set about preparing a small celebration. It's hardly the wedding you must have envisioned, she said apologetically, as she helped Catherine alter one of her better dresses for the occasion. It's perfect, Catherine assured her. I've learned that life rarely follows our careful plans, but sometimes what we find instead is better than what we imagined. The wedding took place in Diamond Creek's parlor, attended by Mrs. Wilson, the ranch hands, and a few trusted friends from Sweetwater who had been discreetly informed. Catherine wore her altered blue silk dress with wildflowers in her hair. Samuel, nearly unrecognizable in his best suit, waited for her by the fireplace, his expression a mixture of joy and disbelief. As they spoke their vows, Catherine felt a sense of rightness that had been absent during her engagement to Harold. This was no desperate arrangement, but a choice made with clear eyes and an open heart. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Thomas declared. You may kiss your bride. Samuel's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, and Catherine responded with unexpected passion, drawing chuckles from the assembled guests. The modest celebration afterward was filled with genuine warmth. Mrs. Wilson had prepared a special dinner, and someone produced a fiddle, leading to an impromptu dance in the cleared dining room. Are you happy, Mrs. Zane? Samuel asked as they swayed together. The new name sent a thrill through Catherine. Remarkably so, Mr. Zane. Later, as twilight deepened, Samuel led Catherine to the small cabin a short distance from the main house, the foreman's quarters that would now be their home. He had spent the day preparing it, with help from the other men. It's not much, he said apologetically as he carried her over the threshold. But it's clean and sound. Catherine looked around at the simple, tidy space, a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and a bedroom visible through a partially open door. Someone, Mrs. Wilson, most likely had placed wildflowers in a jar on the table and turned down the bed with fresh linens. It's perfect, Catherine said sincerely. It's ours. Their wedding night was a revelation to Catherine. Samuel was tender and patient, guiding her through unfamiliar intimacies with reverent care. In his arms, she discovered passion she hadn't known she possessed, and afterward, lying against his chest, she felt a contentment that seemed to reach her very soul. I think I'm falling in love with you too, Samuel Zane, she whispered into the darkness. His arms tightened around her. Then I'm the luckiest man in Montana Territory. Morning brought reality back in the form of increased vigilance. News had spread of Catherine and Samuel's marriage, and everyone understood it might provoke Harold to rash action. The ranch maintained its guard rotation, and Catherine remained within the ranch boundaries, postponing her return to teaching until the situation was resolved. 3 tense days passed. Catherine settled into her role as Samuel's wife and continued helping Mrs. Wilson with ranch accounts. The newlyweds spent their evenings in domestic tranquility that felt both novel and wonderfully right. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Samuel and most of the hands were checking cattle in the far pastures when a fire broke out in one of the hay barns. As everyone rushed to battle the blaze, Catherine was helping coordinate water buckets when a hand seized her arm and dragged her behind the smokehouse. Harold Blackwell's face, twisted with rage, filled her vision. "Hello, darling," he snarled, pressing a knife to her side. "Time to go." "Harold, please," Catherine gasped, the acrid smoke burning her lungs. This is madness. Madness is you marrying that cowboy after traveling all this way to be my wife, Harold growled. Now move. My horse is behind those trees. With the knife at her back, Catherine had no choice but to comply. The ranch hands were all occupied with the fire, clearly a diversion Harold had created for this very purpose. They had nearly reached the trees when a voice rang out. Stop right there, Blackwell. Samuel stood 20 yards away, rifle raised. Despite the distance, Catherine could see fury in every line of his body. Stay back, Zane, Harold shouted, pulling Catherine against him as a shield, the knife now at her throat. She's coming with me. She was promised to me first. Catherine isn't property to be claimed, Samuel replied, his voice steady despite his evident rage. Let her go, and maybe you'll live through this day. Harold laughed bitterly. Big words from a man who can't shoot without hitting his precious wife. The knife pressed harder, and Catherine felt a warm trickle of blood down her neck. I've got nothing to lose, Zane. Prison or a noose waits for me either way. Catherine's eyes met Samuel's across the distance, and in that moment, a wordless understanding passed between them. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. Last chance, Blackwell, Samuel warned. Go to hell, Harold spat. Catherine drove her elbow hard into Harold's stomach, simultaneously dropping her weight downward. As he instinctively bent forward, the knife sliced a shallow cut across her collarbone instead of her throat. She rolled away just as Samuel's rifle cracked. Harold crumpled to the ground, a red stain spreading across his chest. His eyes, wide with shock, fixed on Catherine. You were supposed to be mine, he gasped, before the light in them faded forever. Catherine scrambled to her feet as Samuel reached her, enfolding her in his arms with desperate relief. Are you hurt? Let me see. His fingers gently examined the cut on her neck, which was painful but not deep. I'm all right, she assured him, though she was trembling violently. You saved my life. We saved each other, Samuel corrected, pressing his forehead to hers. Don't ever scare me like that again, Catherine Zane. By nightfall, the fire was extinguished, Harold's body removed, and the sheriff from Clearwater had arrived to take statements. Harold's accomplices, identified from Samuel's description of the road encounter, were being sought. Catherine sat wrapped in a blanket by their cabin's fireplace, a bandage on her neck, as Samuel finished speaking with the sheriff outside. When he finally entered, weariness etched in every line of his face, she rose to meet him. It's over, he said simply. The sheriff says it was clearly self-defense. Relief washed through Catherine. Thank God. Samuel took her hands gently. I thought I'd lost you today, he said, his voice rough with emotion, when I saw him holding that knife to your throat. But you didn't lose me, Catherine whispered. I'm right here. Their embrace spoke of fear conquered and future secured. That night, they held each other close, reaffirming life and love in the face of what they'd nearly lost. In the weeks that followed, life gradually returned to normal. Catherine resumed teaching at the Sweetwater School, earning the respect of both her students and their parents. Samuel continued managing Diamond Creek, introducing innovations that increased the ranch's prosperity. Their small cabin became a true home, filled with books Catherine ordered from back east, furniture Samuel crafted in his spare time, and always the warmth of growing love. 1 year after their wedding, as autumn painted the landscape in gold and crimson, Catherine and Samuel sat on their porch watching the sunset. I have news, Catherine said, taking her husband's hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. We'll need to prepare the small bedroom by spring. Samuel's expression transformed from confusion to wonder. A baby? We're having a baby. Catherine nodded, tears of joy filling her eyes. Due in May, according to my calculations. Samuel gathered her into his arms, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Catherine Zane, you have made me the happiest man alive. Again, do you ever think about how we met? Catherine asked later as they lay in bed, Samuel's hand protectively covering her stomach. How different our lives might have been if Harold had met me at the station that day. I try not to dwell on might-have-beens, Samuel admitted. But I do thank God every day that I was the one who found you. Catherine smiled in the darkness. My groom didn't show at the station. The cowboy carried my trunk and said, come rest a while. She nestled closer to her husband's warmth. Little did I know I'd be resting with him for a lifetime. A lifetime that's only just beginning, Samuel murmured, kissing her tenderly. Their son, Robert Wilson Zane, was born the following May, a healthy, robust boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Mrs. Wilson, declared honorary grandmother, doted on the child shamelessly. By Robert's second birthday, Diamond Creek had a new owner, Samuel Zane, who purchased the ranch from Mrs. Wilson when she decided to move to Denver to be closer to her daughter and grandchildren. It should stay in the family, she declared, including Catherine and Samuel in that designation without hesitation. The schoolhouse in Sweetwater gained an addition to accommodate growing student numbers, with Catherine continuing as teacher until her second pregnancy required her to train a replacement temporarily. She insisted, though Samuel had his doubts. Their daughter, Eleanor Catherine, joined the family just as Sweetwater was celebrating its incorporation as a proper town, with Samuel serving on the first town council. On quiet evenings, Catherine often marveled at the unexpected turns her life had taken. She had journeyed west seeking one future and found another, infinitely more fulfilling one waiting for her. No regrets, Samuel asked on their 5th wedding anniversary, as they watched their children sleeping peacefully. Catherine's answer was a kiss that spoke volumes. Only gratitude, she whispered against his lips. For the man who carried my trunk and gave me a home in this house and in his heart. As Montana Territory moved toward statehood, the Zanes of Diamond Creek Ranch built their legacy not just in cattle and land, but in love that had sprung from the most unexpected beginning, growing stronger with each passing year. Catherine's story became legend in Sweetwater, the abandoned bride who found true love with a cowboy who offered shelter when she needed it most. And on their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and a lifetime of memories, Samuel and Catherine still looked at each other with the same wonder as that first day at Sweetwater Station, when a simple act of kindness changed both their lives forever.